The International Conference on Fostering the Position of Africa as a Primary Tourism Destination brought together top decision makers from across the continent at the MSC Auditorium in Johannesburg. The event showcased a unified vision for repositioning Africa as a world-leading tourism destination. From ministers to private sector CEOs, the agenda focused on building and capacitating tourism and travel structures, regional cooperation, sustainability and infrastructure, with one goal in mind: to unlock Africa's untapped tourism potential and drive inclusive economic growth. 6 high-level ministers from across Africa and a special international guest from Italy delivered a rare and united message. Africa is ready for tourism-led growth. From visa harmonization to sustainable travel frameworks, the keynote speeches emphasized policy reform, investment, and cross-border collaboration as critical enablers of Africa's tourism future.
We position Namibia and by large Africa to capture greater value from this dynamic segment of the global tourism market. Ladies and gentlemen, we recognize the structural challenges we face in the form of limited connectivity, infrastructure deficit, digital transformation gaps, and climate vulnerability. Yet, these challenges present opportunities for innovation and collaboration. We must strengthen inter-Africa air transport and cross-border tourism circuits, allowing us to package Africa as a seamless destination. We must invest in digital tools, integrated booking platforms, online payment systems, and data-driven marketing to improve efficiency and visibility in global markets. And most importantly, we must prioritize human capital development. With Africa's youthful population, tourism can be a major driver of job creation and entrepreneurship, provided that we invest in skills, innovation, and capacity building. To achieve our shared aspiration and of positioning Africa as a primary tourism destination, we must speak with one voice in the global marketplace. We must project unified and compelling brand. Government must place tourism at the forefront of economic policy supported by infrastructure that enables growth, resilience, and promote inclusive and sustainable development, ensuring that rural communities benefit equitably from tourism. The G20, representing the world's largest economy, has both the influence and the responsibility to partner with Africa in reshaping global tourism flows. This means supporting investment in sustainable infrastructure, championing Africa's inclusion in global tourism supply chains, and amplifying Africa's voice in setting global tourism standards. This global demand for authentic, sustainable, transformative travel experiences position our continent at any unprecedented advantage. And Namibia stands ready to work hand in hand with fellow African states, international partners, and the private sector to ensure that Africa realizes its rightful place as a premier global tourism destination. Let us unite our efforts, strengthen our cooperation, and chart a course that will secure Africa's tourism legacy for generations to come. I thank you.
Eswatini's position as a gateway to Africa's cultural heart, we are offering curated cultural routes that connect communities, crafts, and performance arts across borders. We expand culturally themed itineraries that pair Swazi heritage with neighboring countries' experiences, promoting cross-border cultural tourism and people-to-people engagement. Eswatini is a jewel of landscapes, green valleys, rolling hills, savannas, and scenic wilderness within compact geography. We have protected areas such as Umkaya, Hlane, and Sibebe, delivering wildlife experiences with a strong conservation ethos. We promote sustainable tourism practices as standard, encouraging responsible travel that preserves landscapes for future generations while delivering tangible benefits to local communities. Our people are, at heart, Eswatini's most enduring asset, a tradition of hospitality, community cohesion, and a welcoming spirit that makes visitors feel at home, from rural homesteads to urban lodges. We have a flourishing hospitality sector that blends authenticity and value with service excellence as a core principle. And as a kingdom, we are trying all our best to contribute to Africa's tourism leadership by using people-first experiences, home hosting, community-guided tours, culinary storytelling, and language immersive experiences to differentiate Africa's offer. Eswatini's main tourism source market remains South Africa due to geographic proximity, shared travel corridors, and an established migration and cross-border visitation patterns. We benefit from easy air and road access, cultural affinity, and convenient visa policies that support regional travel. We have observed an upswing in visitor numbers approaching pre-COVID levels, signaling a resilient tourism sector and pent-up demand for authentic African experiences. While we are closer to 1 million visitors than we were at the depths of the pandemic, we acknowledge the gap to pre-COVID figures and remain focused on closing it responsibly and sustainably. Our economic aim is for the tourism sector to contribute about 2 billion emalangeni, which is approximately $2 million, about $1 million to Eswatini's GDP through a combination of direct tourism receipts, multiplier effects, and enhanced visitor spend across sectors. On market growth and regional integration, we are fostering to strengthen Eswatini South Africa travel corridors with seamless border experiences, synchronized marketing campaigns, and joint tourism product development. Also expanding regional itineraries that tie Eswatini into a broader Southern African experience for nature, culture, and adventure, driving longer stays and higher spend from tourists. We are also trying to leverage digital marketing and data analytics to identify traveler segments, tailor messaging, and optimize distribution channels. We are also investing in a culturally immersive experience that is authentic, well-managed, and scalable. We have guided cultural routes, storytelling and performance arts and crafts experiences that empower local artisans. On people, hospitality, and skills, we try our best to elevate service quality through targeted training programs for frontline staff, hospitality professionals, and rural guides, creating career pathways and entrepreneurship opportunities for local communities within the tourism value chain, and also promoting multilingual communications and cross-cultural understanding to enhance guest experiences for international visitors. We make it a point that we strengthen conservation funding and community-led stewardship, ensuring tourism revenue supports protected areas and livelihoods, and also implementing responsible tourism standards and accreditation to ensure environmental protection, cultural respect, and safety, fostering inclusive benefits, sharing so communities, women, and youth directly participate in decision-making and benefit realization. On infrastructure, we have tried and we are still pursuing trying to improve the access to high-quality accommodation, transport links, and digital connectivity that meets international standards, and also investing in routes, signage, and visitor information that facilitate easy, safe, and enjoyable travel experiences. As I conclude, honorable colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, to our partners and stakeholders, let us work together to align product development, marketing, and policy so that Africa becomes a model of sustainable, inclusive, and culturally rich tourism. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
At the moment, you would realize that there was quite a lot of focus previously on the east coast of the continent when it comes to cruise. And that on its own was also partly due to the fact that the route would probably be a lot shorter than going through the west coast per se, and so on. But with all the developments that we see, particularly around the Suez Canal, it has actually led to rerouting in some of the cases. And you would find that some of the destinations that are in the west coast would become a lot more prominent than previously, which would probably have been in the eastern coast on the Indian Ocean side. Now, I'm raising this because when you've got more of these destinations and they are actually positioned in a manner that presents diversity, they actually present a sense of resilience. You would not have that resilience if you are dependent on just but one specific cause. So that's one of the areas that perhaps we do need to look into. Of course, there are areas with potential, and I'm also talking about future. There are areas with potential that at the moment may not necessarily have the requisite infrastructure for proper operations in this regard. And as we look at those, we do realize that some of those particular areas that I'm talking about include areas where there are other industrial developments. I'll give you an example in the case of South Africa, where we've got Port of Boegoebaai, which at the moment is really a big port that is positioned very well for green hydrogen. And that sort of green industrial development that would be taking place within that particular space then presents an opportunity for expansion of that infrastructure. Now, as that infrastructure expands, it gives an opportunity to then integrate this leisure aspect that we're talking about. And that then brings about an integrated development. So that kind of integratedness is what would probably propel us forward a lot better. Of course, to be able to develop sufficiently for cruise, you need the entire ecosystem. You would require those that would provide experiences when people have landed. And that would require better connectivity between networks, rather, between tourism trade as well as the owners of these big operations and so on, the MSC cruises and so on. Now, in doing so, what we would also want, I believe, as destinations and probably a region at large, we would also want to see that the benefits formula, if I could put it like that, leaves a net effect. So if we get into a partnership and we say, let's go and market cruise, it means we are actually going to market cruise to the extent that we are going to be marketing to people that should be coming to the destination. And spend time in the destination, spend money in the destination, and then they would actually then move back to wherever they came from. But if we were to do that, but marketing within the country, and people are actually going into the cruise and then coming back into the country, the net effect might actually not necessarily be positive. There will be some circulation of money, but the net effect is likely to be actually a negative one. So that is something that we would actually want to also look into. But if we are talking about within the continent, people are moving from here to Madagascar. The Madagascar is marketing within South Africa to get those people and so on. The benefits will definitely then be correctly accruing to Madagascar. So that is the kind of approach that we would actually really recommend that be taken into account as we do this. We do believe that the cruise ship tourism, by its own nature, it's a catalyst for development of small and micro enterprises, because a whole lot of them are able to come together, form their own networks, but scale up whatever it is that they would like to offer to these tourists with a greater level of predictability, because you know as to when these ships are going to dock, and you know where they are going to dock, but you also know where based on the partnerships that would have existed, where the peoples would actually be channeled to, for lack of a better word, so to say.
We have to invest in infrastructure. But to do that, we have to create the conditions to the financial institution see the project as a bankable project. We have to prepare the project in order to be seen from the institutional finance point of view as a good project to invest. We have good conditions, of course, for tourism in general, but of course in cruise line tourism too, we have 3 different ports that can host cruise lines, and we can see the difference of working alone and working together. Working alone, just in last year, we received 35 cruise lines during the season. But I believe that working together with South Africa and Namibia, we can take some of the crews that already go to Namibia and South Africa, also to Angola. And maybe doing that, we can then work with other countries like Benin, Togo, and do all the West Africa for cruise lines. This working together is the key factor. But we cannot do that continuing doing the same wrong things, expecting different results. One thing that puts us apart of being a very vibrant tourism destination is the visa policy. We have to go through the visa-free policy. It is not understandable now that in Europe, a young boy, a young girl can travel from one country to another without visa. That happens in America. But here in Africa, you have to present a lot of documents just to cross the border from one country to another. So we have the same landscape, the same wildlife. I was saying yesterday that the elephants and the animals, they don't have passports. They just go to one country to another. And we want the tourists to visit the landscape. So if one tourist go to Namibia, which is my dear sister country, and we would like to market it so he can visit Namibia, then go to Angola and also to Zambia and Zimbabwe and Namibia and so on. So it's all the countries that will, of course, benefit of that. The visa-free policy is a key. And in last June, we host the second ministerial conference of HICAO and UN tourism. And we end up with the Luanda Declaration, which is a call for action. It is a call for action because we have seen some other African countries that have adopted the visa-free policy and they have done good. They are not being invited. They are not being with a lot of people applying to go there. So it's a pragmatical vision that we have to discuss and ultimately adopt. So I would like to end here and thank you for your attention.
The panel, titled Tourism as an Engine for Inclusive Growth, gathered industry leaders to explore Africa's brand narrative and the economic power of regional tourism integration.
So I really want us to speak from experience, from the environment, and from our own thinking around how do we shift the mindset of people in this room in the tourism sector in order to make some of these elements come through and become a reality. Not in the long term, but hopefully in the short term. So I've got right at the end Ronel Stander, the CEO of Westgrow. Thank you so much for joining us, Ronel. And then I have Paulo de Oliveira, the CEO of Pen Travel. Thank you so much, Paulo, for joining us. Then we have Tendai Madziwanyika. This is the CEO of a Rainbow Tourism Group. Yeah. And then thank you so much for joining us, Sistembiso Dlamini, the CEO of the Gauteng Tourism Authority. I think let's jump straight into it. And I want to start with you, Ronel, right at the end. We've had a great morning, great conversations. For you, what is the 2 or 3 burning topics that you think we need to walk away with after today?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm the CEO of Westgrow, which is the tourism trade and investment promotion agency for Cape Town and the Western Cape. I think for me, I suppose tourism is Africa's unfinished story. And in this room, we have the pen. So Africa constitutes 17% of the world's population, but we only have 5% of the world's visitors. And I think that is something that I just wanted to provide that context. But for me, some of the priorities include connectivity. That's probably the single biggest challenge for me is connectivity. And if you consider that, we have one of the most important business people across the continent having to apply for 35, Mr. Dangote, he's got to apply for 35 visas just to travel across Africa. And his counterpart, his French counterpart, can travel across Africa visa-free and is able to also go to 180 countries worldwide. So connectivity is a really, really big thing. And certainly in the Western Cape, we've prioritized that. And so we have a program called Cape Town Access, where we ensure direct connectivity. And we heard about infrastructure all morning and the importance of infrastructure. So I won't belabor that, but I might just want to amplify the fact that digital is also infrastructure. And I definitely believe that the future is digital, and there's a lot of work that we need to do in that regard.
Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing those 3 points across. Paulo, you're sitting in a position where you're dealing with the travelers on a day-to-day basis, and you're dealing with the people that are trying to move around. We may not be able to solve some of these. These are big asks. What could we do? Any ideas for you on the simplicity of some of the solutions that we could be implementing?
I think the solutions, we are our best promoters. So as Africans living on the continent, nobody can promote Africa better than us, with passion, with committed sort of drive. It's us. We are the ones. We are the solution. I think Ross spoke earlier. Everyone's talking AI. I want to talk about African intelligence, not artificial intelligence, because I believe that is the way we are the best promoters. In short, sorry for being so direct. The second part is just a cultural listening to honorables from Moçambique e Angola. É importante nós todos estarmos juntos, interculturais, para a gente saber o que estamos a fazer todos, não é? Não vale a pena a África do Sul ter um assunto e a África do Sul não sabe que Angola, que Moçambique, os outros países não estão a fazer. So I think it's better to be together so that we know, intercommunicate what we have as countries, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want tourists, safety. We want to recalibrate the brand, and we want to control the narrative. We don't want foreigners to tell us what we must do. We know, we are Africans, we know exactly what to do. We are, we have the greatest 54 country continent on earth, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
And you're not leaning into just not 54 countries, but some of the greatest and most unbelievable valleys and beaches. And you're speaking of Mozambique, you're speaking of Angola. The interconnectivity is what he was speaking to, and how we need to make sure that even in small pockets, we're connecting and pulling intelligence across. Tendai, do we have the infrastructure? Do we have the things that are required for tourists to come in and find places to stay and to enjoy the country?
I think that in terms of availability, we do have. However, I think that one of the biggest challenges, and I think the honorable ministers, some of them did touch on this, which is the aspect of the need for integration, to be able to smoothen the movement of people across countries. But I think that for me, I'd like to also bring up the whole fragmentation of the facilities that you're talking about, to say, I believe that we're too fragmented. And this is the one reason that we're failing to attract capital. Because, I mean, if the great experience in one location is a 50-room something, and then the other one is, 5 miles away, and it's 20 rooms and so forth. The problem is that we're so fragmented that it's very difficult to attract serious investment. And, to that point, did you know that we have 56,000 hotels on this continent? But who knows that? And of which about 1.9% are branded. But if you look at the US, 75% of the hotels are branded. If you look at Europe, 58% of the hotels are branded. In other words, there's a direct correlation between branding and development of a particular economy. So I feel that it's important that we defragment, we come together, either through cooperation or coming, with bigger projects, and we focus on branding. And we must believe in ourselves as Africans. We have to understand that we are our own future. No one owes us anything. We are ourselves because, when you look at the cultures, the foods, and everything about Africa, we understand Africa because we're from Africa. So why don't we come up, work with global brands, work with them, not fight them, work with them and develop Africa-centric brands. And this is our future, going into, forward.
Thank you so much, Tendai. I don't want to preempt too much, because looking at the things that come up around harmonization, around calibration, around what we have and what is required. What are your thoughts, Stims?
So for me, before I get there, one of the key things that I picked up when Ross was presenting was the issue of product diversification. He said a lot of people, probably 80% of the people in the room, know Cape Town and Kruger. So I just wanted to say welcome to Gauteng. In actual fact, the numbers or the stats that he was talking about, the 8 million, about 41% of international travelers actually come to Gauteng. You know what is interesting? 80% of those travelers come from the continent. So it's an important discussion that we need to have. And yet, as industry, when we talk about the importance of markets, we tend to leave out, the continent and the continental travel. So I think it's an important one. And further down, just 1.2 kilometers further down, there's the Kyalami Circuit. You would have seen in the couple of weeks ago the announcement around the bid of F1. It's happening here, just 2 kilometers away. So it talks to diversification of product. So product is not just brick and mortar. When we talk mega events, that's a product that would actually get people united. In the next week, you would have probably 50,000 people congregating for DSTV Delicious. They need transport, they need accommodation, they need food, cuisine. So that's the kind of new tourism that we have to talk about. So, and in Gauteng, we're known as that cultural hub. We're not going to shy away from it, because if we now begin to actually tell the story of what people must know about our destination, we begin to open it up for SMEs, small businesses, whether you're a fashion designer, there is space for you in the tourism industry because people want to take something, away. But my second point is around infrastructure. Fortunately, in Gauteng, we have taken a special economic zone-led development from a tourism point of view. So in the Val, we've got an SZ, a special economic zone. In there, as tourism, we came in and said, how do we then create a new destination so that we start that product diversification that Ross was talking about? Val is in the West End, is one of our corridors, and we're thinking, how do we then develop a holiday destination? That's why I was excited when I heard that there are, investors that focuses on tourism and hospitality. And these are the things that we've got to talk about. And within the province, whilst we are a smallest province from a land mass point of view, we do own land, which we think it's important for us to start developing and attracting investors. And in our investment conference, we will be able to actually share what are some of the opportunities that exist in Gauteng to create that sustainability that you're talking about. Because once we open up the market, you've got the small players, starting to come in, and we start now leveraging the framework that we have of the Africa Free, trade area that we talk about, but it never materialized. It doesn't. Why must it take me 2 days to actually travel to one of the African countries? Why must I actually go to Europe before I come in here?
Yes.
So it talks to what Ronelle was talking about: air access, air connectivity. We run one of the busiest airports, in the continent, OR Tambo. How do we ensure that we bring in African airlines to actually ensure that the continent is connected?
These are absolutely such complex questions. I do a number of these conversations, and I think the air flight one, sure, I think we need to park that because the complexity of us trying to say, how do we lower the borders? How do we reduce legislation? How do we simplify things for our environment? But I liked also what you said. There's a lot to be seen. And it needs to be developed, but it's already there. By the way, you speak about Kyalami. If you drive further down, when you go to Dalstrom, there's what is that circuit that does the motorbike racing or the smaller... Pardon? Not Kyalami, the one that's further down. Further down. It sits in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. It's amazing. Swartkops.
It actually sits in the cradle of humankind.
It is in the cradle of humankind. Yes.
Yeah.
So we have and look, I have to drive by and they go, what is going on here? Nobody's told me about this. So there's opportunities not only for development on what we have, but there are things that are not there. Ronelle, we have investors sitting around the room. The opportunities for investment probably come before we even communicate about what we have. What are the opportunities? Where should people be looking? Where should we be looking to put our energy, our time, and our money from an investment perspective?
I think that's a very, very important and a very good question. I think that there are probably a couple of key areas. I think investing into connectivity is an important aspect. So I don't think that we can shy away from that. There are lots of opportunities for investing in infrastructure across the African continent. I, of course, have a much bigger and better understanding of the Western Cape. And certainly in the Western Cape, there's a lot of investment happening at the moment in the airport. So there's a 20 billion investment happening over the 5-year period. In addition, our ports, there's an opportunity to continue to invest in the cruise terminal at the port. Rooms, there's always a shortage of rooms, in the province. So there are lots and lots of opportunities to invest. But I do think that, through that process of investment, and I said it before, inclusivity is not a charity, it's part of our competitive edge. And then I think it's also about investing in the marketing and the branding. I like to say that, our traditional markets, Europe, UK, USA, that has been our kind of base. But our future is going to be built on new markets. And when I talk about new markets, I'm talking about the outbound China traveler, the Gulf, India. So we really, really do need to invest in building our brand, the African brand. And I've just recently come back, and I won't mention the country, but I just recently came back. And, it's the kind of place where there's a lot of money. And, if you want a rainforest, they'll build a rainforest in the middle of the city. And I went into this rainforest, but I couldn't help longing for the beauty and the natural, the nature, the natural beauty of the African continent. So I think we have lots to offer, but tourism is not about beautiful seas and oceans and mountains. It is an economic lever. It's an economic lever to grow the African economy, and it's an opportunity to create jobs across Africa. So, so investment, I think there are lots of opportunities for investment, but probably positioning ourselves in those future markets, I think, is quite
critical. There's going to be lots of conversations on investment for the next couple of days. We also talk a lot about, we're going to come back to sustainability, but we also talk about branding and positioning and letting it well known. This is not rocket science. Right? It's probably one of the easiest, most amazing things to be able to do. Why are we not doing it? Why are we talking about it as if it's a topic still, Paulo? Who should be doing it? I don't know if you can answer that very difficult question to a very simple ask.
About branding?
Yeah, branding, marketing, positioning, letting people know who we are, where we are.
We have to control the narrative. We are our greatest brand ambassadors. And why don't we do it more? Because sometimes we focus as human nature. We tend to look at the negative more than the positive. We're driven by social media. And why does social media want? Sensationalism. So we sort of fall into that. Sometimes we call social media social heroin because you get addicted to the negative. No one wants to hear good news before they hear the bad news. So Africa, for me, has got so much opportunity. And the branding starts with us. It really starts with us. And I call it the multiplier effect. The pay it forward. We've all heard of the pay it forward phenomenon. You do something good. So if a tourist comes in and you ask for directions, I believe we have the friendliest people in the world as Africans. Somebody asks for directions. Where can I go to Kailami racetrack? Well, you're at the right place. You're not too far away. And it's the warmth of South Africans that will invite you into their home for a braai or a barbecue. We are the brands. As pessoas, nós é que somos os grandes ambassadores melhores no mundo. Não há melhor que nós mostrar a nossa hospitalidade. So I do believe in
I love that I can hear him. I don't know about you. All you got to do is spend a little bit of time in Mozambique, and he's like, "Nosh, it's about we've got to do our own branding. We've got to be our own brand ambassadors." I'm so proud of myself, and that app called Boostu really helps. And if we can learn each other's languages, learn what's happening, get fascinated by different countries as well. And I think Paulo speaks to that. We're a testament in this room of how important diversity is and inclusion. And there are countries that are doing it really well, but Tendai, I'm going to ask you, who do you see doing it really well, positioning and marketing and just holding up the flag? You look at, where is it, the Pearl of Africa. I went recently. I couldn't believe how gorgeous it was, yet nobody speaks about it, right? So we have hidden gems, but who's doing a good job? Who do we follow?
I think that if you look at Rwanda, I think Rwanda did well. They took a very terrible situation, and in a very short time they managed to turn that narrative around, and they've become a prime destination for the capital on the continent. I think Rwanda's done a very good job. They're also working very fast in terms of taking away the visa issues. So I think they're doing well in terms of attracting travelers from the continent. And I tell you, I think this African story is something that we really need to look at. As a company, I can tell you, we started focusing on business from Africa. And between 2022 and 2024, we literally grew business arrivals from Africa by over 100%. Sure. So it's actually about belief in ourselves. I also think South Africa is doing a great job. In fact, we piggybacked on South Africa for a long time, and South Africa was able to market, the Vic Falls as if it was part of South Africa. And that helped us a lot. And we didn't mind that, they sort of grabbed the Vic Falls from us. Great things happen to those that care not. Who gets the credit, right? So we really have a great, relationship with South Africa. And I'm pleased to see Ronel on the panel because as a company, we've actually invested in Western Cape, because Cape Town's done a fantastic job in terms of positioning themselves and making sure that they become globally competitive in terms of attracting international capital. So I think that some countries have done exceptionally well. I was talking to our rep from Germany just before I came here, and I heard that Angola is doing fantastically well in the German market and broadly in the European market, to attract arrivals from there. So I honestly think that various countries on the continent are doing a great job. But I think the challenge now is to say, how do we form a platform where we harmonize the marketing now and speak with one voice and in a multi-destination manner?
That's a little bit below our pay grade. So we are hoping that you are going to have these conversations and make sure that this happens. And if you can't, call us in and we can moderate and make sure that we're creating this harmonization.
Yeah.
Speaking of stealing, Gauteng also advertises the Krug as if it's theirs.
No. We've got Dinukeng just outside.
And you also take Dinukeng and it's yours.
Absolutely.
But I think we've got good examples. And there are small low-hanging fruit as well. What are you focusing on to shift the dial?
So for us, we cannot focus on big things without actually involving communities. And I think I've heard a lot of, the honorable ministers were talking about how you do community beneficiation. It's important for us to take everybody with. So you spoke about what constitutes good branding. For me, it's consistency. So if in Gauteng we have about 16.1 million citizens, that must actually speak on behalf of Gauteng. But they need to see infrastructure that works for them, not just for tourism only. They need to see a destination that is safe, not just for tourists, but for them as citizens. They need to see young people in jobs. They want to see entrepreneurs, making it, now exporting some of their products, not just for tourists only. So I think that community beneficiation becomes, quite important. So as Gauteng city regions, we all know that we've got very vibrant township. So the issue around the township economy becomes very important. So when we talk tourism, we're not talking about a bus just going into a Soweto, a hop on, hop off, and then we're waving, and then we're smiling, and then we go out. How do we then actually involve, the millions of people who are in Soweto to actually understand that they're part of the, value chain? So for me, that's very important, and we're going to win if anybody on the street understands the value of tourism. Right now, as professionals, as tourism practitioners, we can talk about how it's an economic lever, but someone on the streets must be able to say, actually, hang on, tourism is important for my livelihood. We've got people who went to university, people who actually work and feed families through the tourism value chain. So for me, that's an important one. And the career, expos that we normally do, there's a lot of career. So career in tourism is not just working in a hotel or cruise ship. In fact, you want business analysts in the tourism business. You need statisticians. You need accountants in the tourism value chain. So it's important to position tourism not just a vanilla or an ice cream sector, but it's important to understand that very critical skills are required to actually take the industry to the next level. And as practitioners, we need to battle with those things so that we can attract the development that tourism can drive in all our destinations.
And what you've mentioned, I think, is a challenge across the continent, is the training and the development. It's all good and well that we set up the establishments, but when you don't have from the basic to the most complex, and again, if we had to choose which one to solve, if we solve that, and I see you, Paolo, nodding, if we solved that, we'd be solving a major part. But Ronel, speaking of infrastructure and investment, the other part maybe that the Western Cape has gotten right or that you work hard at is the public-private partnership.
Yeah.
Okay, how have you done it? Because Western Cape came out of nowhere. It was COVID, we came up, then all of a sudden everybody was moving to the Western Cape and all holidays were booked there. What happened with the partnership model?
Yeah. So I think maybe the first point to say is that we are growing. So we have exceeded pre-COVID levels. So I think that is quite important. So public-private partnership is one of the levers. So Certainly, if you look at Cape Town Air Access, we pulled together the private sector. Westra acts as the convener, and we get together all of the stakeholders in that ecosystem. So it's airport company, South African tourism, brand is, all of the ecosystem players come together. And we basically plan together, and this is what we do. So in the Cape Town Air Access play, we obviously attract direct flights into the Western Cape, and there is so much demand. So when we added 30 new direct flights onto the American route, that capacity was just sucked up. And in fact, right now, on direct flights to the US, a business class seat will cost you 200,000 Rand plus. And there's so much latent demand. But we can't add new capacity because we don't have the bilateral, we don't have enough capacity in the bilateral. So there's obviously quite a bit of work that has to be, done in that space. We did a similar model with Cruise Cape Town. Where we work with the V&A Waterfront, we work with DHL, we work with Casidra, and a whole range of private sector investors, where they invest. And again, Westra is the convener, but we work with a whole ecosystem. So it is SAMSA, it is TNPA, so it's all of the agencies that will ensure that we're able to deliver the client experience that we need to deliver. All of those will work together. So public-private partnership is just part of the DNA, in the Western Cape, and so for me it's just a natural thing. We have expanded that public-private partnership now to go into the field of education, where we have, and it's been phenomenally successful as well. Where we invest, we get the private sector to invest in low-fee schools, so that we can obviously ensure that people are educated. So so that is just one element of it. But I could probably go on this. There are obviously a whole lot of other elements that have contributed to the phenomenal growth in tourism, notwithstanding the fact that most of our tourism staff have actually gone into business process outsourcing. So during COVID, we pivoted to BPO, and all of those staff actually went in there. So there's quite a staffing shortage. So lots of opportunities also to invest in people.
And it requires a little bit of creativity.
Yeah.
Innovation
to understand
is the name of the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To understand that people that work in tourism don't have to be bred for tourism. They can come from any walk of life. And if they came from BPO, can you imagine, for them it's a change of environment. Paulo, how do you see innovation and technology and just out-of-the-box thinking playing perhaps to also solve some of our challenges?
I think grassroots is a start. I'm a firm believer that people sell what they know, and if they know tourism, if they value the multiplier, what I call the multiply effect of what tourism does. Tourism, a chef is indirectly linked. So is agriculture indirectly linked to transportation, drivers, guides. So I know, to my colleague on the right, I know we're in the city of gold, Gauteng, but I believe the new gold is tourism. Tourism is the new gold globally, and for Africa specifically, because of our natural resources. So I would love to see Sky Dreams is to have tourism as a subject already at primary school level. I've got a 10-year-old son, and we do NST, we do geography, but we don't even touch on tourism. There's like a rough tourism, the longest rivers in Africa and the cradle of humankind. Nature, as we know it, started in Africa, not too far from here. So why don't we teach tourism as a subject where it's just sort of been moved across, in terms of it's a little subsect of geography? No, I think geography should be a subset of tourism. So, yeah.
slight shifts in thinking that are required. You know, tours for kids to go and see tourist destinations, which is what is done globally, and it's something that we don't do for kids. We don't take them to see national sites, museums. They don't have the appreciation. So to develop it at an early stage, Tendai also leaning into the topic, which is quite broad as well. How do we utilize innovative thinking, AI? And I think social media is our tool to use. We're not the victims of it. How do we start to just utilize those levers?
Well, I think the first thing is we really need to pay attention to internet penetration. On the continent, internet penetration is still at 38% against a global average of about 68%. So we need to invest in that sector in order to get to use social media much more efficiently and effectively. Again, when you talk about AI infrastructure, less than 1% of data centers are on the continent. Of course, the biggest elephant in the room is obviously, the cost of electricity, the cost of power. And we need to be able to deploy that. Now, AI is something we can't ignore. When you talk technology, when you talk social media and so on, you need to invest in AI into the future because of the benefits that it clearly will bring. But I think somebody did mention earlier that we need to be careful as Africa to say, humanoids can deliver efficiency, but it's humans that deliver, that
the humanity,
the feeling, and convey, what it is to be human. And I think that when you look at projections saying Africa will go from, I think, 1.4 billion to about almost 1.6 billion by 2030 and double, get to 3 billion by 2050. When you look at those, you then say, how do we optimize that human potential and get it to, to interact very well with technology? So in other words, that concierges, it's okay to have AI help you with language. And very nice, you can sort of understand Portuguese and speak Portuguese and so on. So you do need that in order to break down the barriers of communication. But you still need people. And that is one thing I think that as Africa, we need to ensure that we safeguard that competitive advantage of humans and people. But we have to invest, one more point. We have to invest in training. Now, if you look at, say, the European model, the Swiss model, what they do is they integrate training of hospitality within existing properties. So in other words, you're running a hotel, and instead of having a hotel school that is a school on its own, that school is actually integrated within an existing hotel. That gives you practicality. So if you're looking at 124,000 hotels on the continent by 2030, you need to upskill that. You need AI help, and you need people that are properly skilled. Yeah.
Thank you so much for leaning in once more. But I think for me, Stay, if there was a priority after today's conversations, after our panel today, that you could push across, whether it's to business leaders or to government, on what it is that we need to do to just really unlock Africa's tourism growth.
I think we've already mentioned that the issue of connectivity is very critical. You can't have, we can talk all we want, but how are we going to get people into our respective destinations? It's either they cross the border, or I'm not sure whether we want them to swim or anything, but air connectivity.
We don't swim generally.
Yeah, exactly. So air access becomes very critical, but not just air access to get into the destination. When you are at the destination, how do you ensure that your destination is connected? So, for example, you land at OR Tambo, you get onto a Gautrain train.
Yeah.
So it talks to the work that we're doing in terms of the expansion of the routes, so that we can also link the Lanseria, space or the airport there to just all the nodes. So the transport connectivity becomes a critical issue. People might not think it's sitting in tourism, but it's a great enabler, for tourism. Skills. I couldn't help it, but just to also say we are bold in Gauteng. There's a township called Garankuwa, and in there was a hotel school. Then I think it was called Sitlogelo. Right now, we call it Garankuwa Hotel School. So what we're trying to do is exactly what you're saying. We want to build a hotel, but within that hotel, there must be conferencing facility, but there must be a hospitality and tourism school, so that at least these things are integrated. They just don't learn in classroom and wait for someone to actually now recruit them. So I think that vision or that reality, when it comes to fruition, it will go a long way in terms of actually building a skills base, not just for Gauteng, but for South Africa and the continent. And I like the fact that the Italian minister was talking about wanting to actually expand that footprint, or the project that they've started in Egypt. It'll be an interesting one to actually partner with them for a project such as Garankuwa Hotel and Hospitality School.
So it's always, I looked forward to coming, even if it was a Saturday. I was like, it's one of my best conversations around tourism, because there's just so much great potential, and I hope that you found the conversation very interesting as well. Thank you to my panelists. I think we've really delved into a lot of the elements, and we will leave out some of the ones that were mentioned this morning. But if we have any one or two questions or any other burning issues from our panelists, I'm happy to say it's been great. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes the International Conference on Fostering the Position of Africa as a Primary Tourism Destination. With policy momentum, private sector commitment, and a shared regional vision, Africa is no longer positioning itself as an emerging player. It is claiming its space as a premier global destination.